Hi everyone, Joe and Zoe here from In Good Company, and today we thought we would talk to you about the key principles of group coaching. We realised that in our videos we focus very much on one-to-one coaching, and Zoe and I have also done a lot of group coaching, which we absolutely love. And also for coaches who want to grow their business, going from one-to-one to one-to-many situation can be a really enjoyable next step in growing their coaching businesses. So we're just going to share with you a few thoughts around key principles or thoughts that pop into our mind this morning about group coaching. So
Yeah.
where can we start?
Do you know, one of the first things that comes to mind for me is an obvious one. It's around your contracting. And contracting in groups is definitely not a one-time event because the dynamics of a group shape and change as you work through a group program. And I think by group program, it can be very, very broad. So you might be working with a group, which are a group inside an organization and they're a team and they're an established team and they work together and they know each other really well. That's a group. Also, a group might be a group of strangers that you've brought together for a particular experience as part of a coaching program. So, group dynamics are undefinable because every group will bring something different to the table. So, an obvious place is when you start a group, you need to have ways of working. And what will we do if we get into difficult territory? What will we do if we feel unsafe? How will we create safety in this group so that we all feel heard and we all feel witnessed? So I think there's contracting at the start, but then as you go through each session or each contact point that you have with the team, as the coach, as the facilitator, you need to be really attuned to what is being said in the group and what isn't being said in the group. And you have to have a huge amount of courage, I think, as a group coach to voice those things that you're seeing that aren't being said. And there's judgment required there because you can choose to voice that within the group, or you may choose to address something with a person that you're seeing is experiencing difficulty or is creating difficulty. So there's lots of points within a group that as the coach, you need to be an incredibly skilled facilitator and courageous coach to be able to face into the different dynamics that are emerging and evolving. All of that said, dynamics are also fascinating and exciting, and it's a huge honor and privilege to be part of a group in that kind of learning environment. So equally as it is challenging, it's also incredibly enjoyable.
Yeah, and when we facilitated groups, thinking about the size of the group that you feel comfortable to work with. So if there are, for example, 12 people in a group, it would always be Zoe and I together that would facilitate that. And also it depends on what's the topic, what's the purpose of the group, how long are we working with the group, how are the group arriving, what place are they at, where are we meeting them at, which would inform our decision about whether it was one of us or two of us. But obviously when there's two facilitators and a small group, that shifts the dynamics greatly. And you need to be conscious around people's perceptions of your relationship with any one individual or number of individuals in the group and how that impacts their experience of it. So safety is a fundamental to group coaching, and it's likely you will need to do work on that throughout the course of it. So it's a fundamental principle of it. What about the other competencies? So if you think about like coach competencies needed,
I think understanding self, which is one of the EMCC core competencies. There will be situations within groups that I don't know if I like the word trigger you, but for example, I think expectations are high in groups of the facilitator and of the coach. And so when people are in groups, you often get more challenges and queries around whether the group is meeting that person's expectation, or could you adjust the content to account for this, or could you do that? There's a lot of demands upon the facilitator and the coach, and I think it's really important to be able to move beyond your own kind of triggers. So what I mean by that is if you have kind of this underlying belief or or sort of thing that sits within you where you're not good enough. If somebody comes to you and says, oh, the program, it's just not quite hitting the spot for me, you know, I think that this hasn't been done particularly well, and I think it needs more of this, which happens in group environments. You need to have comfort with that not good enough piece of you in order to be able to lean into those conversations in service of the client and hold boundaries around whether it is or isn't appropriate to bend the content or the shape to the needs of one person when you actually have a group to think about. So in a one-to-one situation, you have much more ability to be flexible and work with the needs of one client, but you're in a group, you're there for the collective, and that's a much finer balance to sort of navigate. So I think understanding yourself and knowing, you know, what's yours, what's theirs, how you're feeling at any one point in time is a huge part of the work in being a group coach. What other competencies would you think of, Jo?
What's on my mind is thinking about managing time. So, you know, it's not that it's a different competency to what's needed in a one-to-one scenario, but when you're thinking about how you divide your time up in a group of, across a group of, let's say, 12 people, and you're adapting exercises maybe that you've used in a one-to-one, or maybe you've created a new, you know, exercise, you've got one specifically for a group. Actually, it takes a lot of time to give 12 people the opportunity to really be heard and witnessed. So you need to decide, you know, are you going to facilitate activities where people are in small groups? And if you've got small groups, let's say groups of 3, and there are 2 facilitators, you can't be with everybody at the same time. So how will you facilitate the debrief, the learning, and ensure that you are having meaningful contact with each person in the group so that you understand what their experience is? And, you know, part of being a group coach, I think, is in that contracting phase, is about contracting for the fact that the success of the group is shared among everybody. And I think that is a mistake that a lot of people facilitating group sessions make, is that they take all of the responsibility onto themselves. As a facilitator, it's all down to me. And I think it's really important that in the contracting, you contract for, you know, what are you going to contribute to the group, as well as what are your hopes, what are your expectations of the group. So managing time is really critical. Having time for evaluation at the end of the session, or even actually as you go through, just say, how are we doing? Let's just take a few minutes. This is what this is what you as a group wanted to focus on today. This is what we've done so far. Here's some of the learnings that we had. This is the plan as to where we go next. Does that still feel like, you know, the place to go? And, you know, if you need to create that space for discussion, because that's where often the richness is in some of the debate between different members of the group. And I think, you know, there will be resistance, as you kind of alluded to earlier, and that's natural, that's normal. I think it's something that we all experience, and we'll always remember.
I'm laughing because I know we're remembering the same same event. Yeah,
because Zoe and I facilitated a group program a few years ago, and it was such a rich learning experience for us. And we put in, there was a sort of a week in the middle of it, and we put in stuff that was stretchy for the group and also for us as facilitators. And you never know quite how something's going to land, even if you've done it with other groups. Each group is completely unique. Anyway, this was new for us, but it was part of the design of the principles of the program. And one of the individuals said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but basically, that doesn't sound very good to me. But it was the essence of it. And actually, to be able to stand in a genuine and authentic way in a place of, that's really useful information internally, rather than, how am I going to deal with this, and going into that panic. So it's thinking about, I think some of the core competencies are around how you prepare yourself for, as you were talking about earlier, the energy exchange in the group, the resistance, the connection, all of the beautiful things that happen in a group. Is really important, and also the debrief. So when we're facilitating together, it's great because we get to debrief afterwards and leave that stuff, you know, where it belongs,
Mm-hmm.
or also use obviously facilitator, a supervisor to help us do that. But what happened on this group program where we had the resistance and we didn't resist it back, we kind of allowed the space for it, is that person had the greatest transformation, and at the end of the program was the greatest advocate for it. And that for me in a nutshell represents, if you can engage with the competencies that are needed for everybody to feel like they co-own it and they're all invested in it, and it's okay to take risks. And you've got to think about, what are you modeling to the group in terms of behaviors as the facilitators?
That's what I was just sat with. I think as a group coach and a group facilitator, you are the role model. You're the role model in terms of how you deal with resistance, how you celebrate success, how you celebrate people, how you show emotion, how you show vulnerability. As much as the content of your group coaching programs are important, everybody in that group is learning by osmosis in the way that they all share the learning experience and how you navigate and help them to work through what arises in that space. And that is, that's hard to teach. I think that comes from all of your coach development and all of the work that you do with clients, and we've said throughout this, a huge amount of courage in terms of what personal risk you're willing to take when it comes to developing stretching experiences. So it's just such a fascinating area. We hope for many of you who are watching this and are either group coaches, share with us your learnings, your experiences. And for those of you in one-to-one situations who've been thinking about group coaching, my sort of words to you would be like, have a go. There's no right or wrong. It's all a journey, and trust in your experiences.
Something that's just popping into my mind that I was thinking about earlier is, and I do this in my one-to-one coaching, and I'm sure a lot of the coaches watching do as well, which is variety in terms of how you engage with your clients. So you might think about it in terms of engaging with their different learning styles, or you might just think about, you're kind of you want to inject different sorts of energy. But I think in a group coaching situation, it is even more important. So think about, and this is whether you're in person or you're in a virtual place, like people, you don't want people just sat staring at a screen for, let's say the whole day or half a day. So think about, how can you, include little activities that, sometimes you just need stuff to change the state and the energy in the room. Ideally, there'll be activities that do have a theme that relates to what you're working on that might not be obvious, but then people will get it. And fun, like, I think it's really important, even when you're working on meaningful things, to have that balance between meaning and lightness, and be able to have fun. So it's a place that people want to be, and that they're prepared to be a bit uncomfortable in. And one of the things you need to think about is, when you introduce activities, where there are activities where people may not be comfortable to share, are you going to ask everybody to share? Are you going to tell them right now we're all going to share this? Or are you going to give people the opportunity to do it and see if anybody does? And how will you handle it if nobody shares when you invite them to do that? So, there are some logistical things which can go back to that contracting. And that isn't just at the start of the session. It's about what information do you send to your group before you even meet? How do you recruit people onto your group coaching program so that you have a mix of people that are going to really be able to support each other wherever they're at in their development journey? So that's quite a few extra things.
That was a few. Brucey bonus. All right.
Well, we're not scripted, so you get what's on our mind in the moment.
So look, if you are inspired by this, thinking about, group coaching and just topping up your skills, come and hang out in our coaching crowd group. There's loads of experienced coaches, aspiring coaches in there. Perhaps you're a line manager or a leader and you're watching this and you've got a team and you're thinking, gosh, yeah, I could definitely do with learning a bit more about coaching. Then come and hang out with us. It's at the Coaching Crowd. You can find it on Facebook. And we have more videos on our blog and on our YouTube channel.